if you're one of my returning and valued viewers, you understand that for a game and movie franchise, I usually delve through my personal history before the actual review itself. So, this is the review for the Dark Pictures Anthology Little Hope, which has the same developers from Until Dawn and Man of Medan, which the developers are Supermassive Games, and it's published by Bandai Namco. So, with Until Dawn, for me, that was one of my all time favorite horror game experiences. Cliche story, yes, but I like to look at it as like the film The Cabin in the Woods. It knew what it was, it went along with it, and it gave you some unexpected, surprising turns, but in the end, it knew what it was. It was very self aware. It gave you so many outcomes due to so many choice based decisions. For me, Until Dawn was a 9 out of 10. It felt very fresh to me. Man of Medan, which released about 2.5 years ago, I finally got my hands on my copy that I pre ordered and got for day one, but I just never really played it. I just picked it up about 2 to 3 weeks ago, right before playing Little Hope. So, I mean, in the end, it was really good timing. So, Man of Medan, I gave a 6 out of 10 for basically just lackluster everything that made Until Dawn such a huge success. I will say Man of Medan's aesthetic and setting, I believe, was creepier and better placed than Until Dawn. So here we are with the second standalone story in Supermassive Games Dark Pictures Anthology Epic. So, Little Hope. I'll get the best parts out of it right away because I feel that this should be noted prior to anything else I say. So, the absolute best and good things about Little Hope, I would say it does have an interesting and involving story. It has good motion capture, and when you make a consequential decision, it does affect the outcome mostly. That's about it that I have to say good about Little Hope. Otherwise, it's honestly worse than Man of Medan. It's lackluster writing. Most of the time, it's inconsequential choices, and pretty much all of the time, when it wanted me to make a choice that wasn't a QTE, when it was dialogue based, I honestly had to go with Say Nothing. The dialogue was so cringing. I couldn't see myself choosing pretty much any of the dialogue choices. As far as the QTE, I thought it was very well involved, and that's the thing about the QTE too. Match that with the storytelling and the story. It actually told the story very well, even in the QTE. They had camera zooms and camera transitions that matched. When you had to save this one person, the camera would pander over to that person and then you would do the QT, or vice versa. You had to help save another person, and you played as that person that was getting harmed. It would transition to the other person, and it did it very smoothly, I will say that. Otherwise, though, the cutscenes, there were times where they felt very choppily edited. For example, there was a scene in it, and minor spoilers, I'll say, preface ahead of time. There's a scene where you're playing as a couple of the characters, and it goes through a QTE sequence of jumping up and down obstacles. Well, while they're being chased, it's a monster. But here's the problem, though. They jump up and down over all these obstacles and barriers, and then after every single scene, the monster just randomly got past those obstacles, and it just shows it walking towards you every single time. And I was left dumbfounded. Or a better experience was somebody would get knocked down, they'd kick the monster in the face, and then the next scene, they would be standing up, as would be the monster, coming at them, and it's just like, well, this doesn't really add up at all. So I feel like in the editing process, they cut out some scenes where they were just like, this is the extra fat, but honestly, it made the storytelling feel clunky. And, I mean, otherwise, inconsequential choices for the most part, clunky storytelling, although in its defense, the other part of the storytelling was well told. What else was there? Just, there were so many negatives, I couldn't even keep track. So for me, personally, reviewing Little Hope, I have to be as objective as I can be. I can't just go in and be like, oh, Until Dawn, one of my favorite horror games ever, so all of these are amazing. No, Supermassive Games has definitely been a giant disappointment after every single standalone game that they've produced and developed since Until Dawn. And Little Hope is not an exception. Little Hope is far from an excellent game. I would say the excellent parts of it are the interesting premise and some of the well-shot QTEs. Otherwise, most of the game suffers from how a horror movie is well made. So a well-made horror film is usually going through a brisk hour to an hour and a half, discovering the events that led into the main story, and then the characters start to get killed off. That doesn't work in horror games, especially in horror games where your choices make the outcome of the story. I appreciate the interesting premise and story and some of the storytelling, but it all doesn't add up well since they use the storytelling structure of, let's get the main story in there, let's cram it in there so that they understand, and then we'll start killing people off. It doesn't work. And not to mention, jump scares are a terrible horror plot device. And yet, just like the film Come Play, they use that and they implement it in the most inappropriately obnoxious places. Like, you'll go to pick up something, a medallion, just like any other Supermassive game, you'll inspect it, you'll let go of it, put it back down, and then a ghost hand will grab you, and it's the same horrifying lady. And the first time, it didn't really get me, but it happened, and I was like, oh, okay, they're taking you back into the past, showing you some story elements. Okay, that's fine. They do it like 20 plus times through the entire 4.5-hour story, which I'm not against a short story if it's well told, which for the most part, it's an interesting story. It's not strung out and it's not too short, but for a game like this, and it being 4.5 hours, even at 4.5 hours, the jump scares of and then pulling you into the past, oh, even by the second time, I was done with it. And I mean, the performances were okay. I did appreciate the outro, what happened in the end. I thought the intro, the prologue, was very, I don't know, it didn't match up. When the prologue happened and it got into the title theme song, I don't know, I just sat there thinking and saying to myself, this is not like Until Dawn or anything horror related. It was basically just a bunch of people getting killed off instantly, and it was like, well, my choices led to basically the story telling its story rather than deviating, making you feel like you're in it. Okay, that's what gripped me so strongly from Until Dawn. Every choice you made impacted how the story was told and how the story went. Man of Medan, it was sort of like that. In Little Hope, there is basically little hope for consequential choices. And that's the biggest part of Supermassive Games stories and games. And honestly, if that's one of the biggest letdowns, then it's not going to be that good of a game experience. I hate to break it to you guys. And I mean, I'm still not fully against Supermassive Games. I'm not fully against Little Hope. I hope that the curator's cut that they release, I hope it does fill in some of those holes and editing problems, and I hope they, at some point, they bring out an update where they just revamp and redo their choice style, because otherwise the biggest choices that are made in this game are the choices in the cutscenes that they make, and you have no playtime with it. Like literally, you'll be given a 3 dialogue option: this, that, or say nothing, and it'll be like somebody will do something good for you, and it'll be arrogant, I could have done it myself, or accepting. But the acceptance, it wouldn't be like, thank you, I appreciate it. The acceptance would be like, well, you did that and it's cool, but I got it from here. So most of the time, I was just like, I couldn't see any of these characters, let alone myself, saying this stuff. So I usually reverted to saying nothing. So all in all, I would say Little Hope in the Dark Pictures Anthology is mostly a letdown and a disappointment. It's not a terrible game, though. It's play it once. You'll get an interesting, fascinating story out of it. But otherwise, Little Hope is a 4 out of 10 for me. Thank you.